I'm particularly excited about today's webinar because it brings us back to the core, the core of who we are, our philosophy. When we started these webinars, our focus initially was on the body, the brain, the mind, and the body, and helping people understand how their bodies work, what their bodies need to function, and of course, how to avoid the threats that are out there. That was what we really, that was the main intention. But as we grew, as we began to serve people, we began to realize that there was more, that people needed to understand more aspects. But the core, the main thing that will help you as a person take control of your health is understanding how your bodies work and what your bodies need to function. And that's why, especially when it comes to the human brain, I think it's really important for us to understand how our brains work, because in the final analysis, it's the brain that controls the rest of the body. When you can, I've heard it say that if you can transplant a heart from one person to the other, but if you take someone's brain and put it in another person, I mean, you're having, oh, well, I'm going to mix it all up. Is Elizabeth on the phone? I think we have a little problem here, folks. But let me get through with this, and we'll try and get Dr. Elizabeth back on.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. There was a technical issue I had to take care of, so I'm back.
Okay, great. Just before I hand over to Elizabeth, to Sherry, to introduce Dr. Elizabeth, we're going to just to mention a few other resources that might be of interest to you that are in our online store. The Human Brain, Your Master Control System, and we just do an overview of the brain, what your brain needs to function. We maximizing your brain power and awakening your inner genius were done by Dr. Miles Jones, who is an educator. He basically raises geniuses. He goes to the inner cities and trains kids to be smart, and he knows a lot about the brain and how it functions. So if you are interested, you can go to the online store and get copies for yourself. Again, if you're a member, you get all these resources at half price. All right, Sherry, are you ready?
I'm ready. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Elizabeth Owings. She is a medical doctor who has served as the chief surgical resident at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, a critical care fellow in the Department of Pediatric Surgery at Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago, and a pediatric surgery fellow at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital in St. Louis. Wow. Her research into the use of vitamins, minerals, and other natural remedies took her through tens of thousands of articles and published research papers, making her truly an expert on natural therapies. And we are just so glad that she is joining us here tonight. Elizabeth, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes. David, we
I apologize. I'm handing it over to you right now.
Okay. One of those, and there we go. That should do. All right. Is that showing up okay?
Yes,
Perfect.
It is.
Great. And I feel I should you may have heard my introduction and said surgery, pediatrics, but is this person a neurosurgeon? No, I'm not actually a neurosurgeon. And my interest in nutritional therapies started when I was doing my research, required research in general surgery. And I'd been sent to the medical literature to look up some information, answer a question basically for my mentor, and he gave me an idea of what sort of things to look for, and then turned me loose. And, searches then were the same as searches now. The better you get at asking questions, the more specific the answer will be. Well, I was really new to it, and I got a very broad range of answers and filtered through all of them looking for what he was looking for. Well, in finding the answer to his question, I kept tripping over information that was answering nagging questions that I had in my mind for years. And basically what I was finding was there was information of how amino acids or vitamins or minerals or basically optimizing nutritional situations could actually help people get better from situations I had been taught in conventional medicine they would be stuck with forever. And it really piqued my curiosity, and I actually alternated between enthusiasm and consternation that no one had told me these things before, because the information was right there in the medical literature, right next to all these studies about drugs and operations and other things like that. As I've gone through my training, that little resume that you heard covers well over a decade of training. I kept looking for more answers, and questions would come up, and I would be dissatisfied with what conventional medicine might have to offer, and would begin looking at, and that's sort of what brings me to you here today with the information that I've got. I'm not a nerve or neuron specialist. I'm not a neurologist, but my interest in nutrition makes it it's just too tempting not to look into. So hopefully this will be interesting and useful for everybody joining us tonight. The first thing I want to mention is some paradigm shifts that have gone on in medicine, and it's important to look at these and understand these. You may remember the RDA, or Recommended Dietary Allowance, and of course they've changed the name and the concept several times. But basically, when we're talking about a nutritional deficiency, what we're talking about is, or how did they set up the RDA? The idea is 97% of those whose intake of any given nutrient is less than the RDA will demonstrate some sort of clinical deficiency. That's how they figured out what the RDA would be. Now, it begs the question, if for thinking people, you have to ask, what about the 3% who get the RDA but still have an obvious clinical deficiency? And what about subclinical states where people, it's not an obvious thing, it's not something that most physicians could pick up on, maybe they don't meet all the criteria for a nutritional deficiency, but the systems aren't working as well as they could because the nutrition isn't optimal. The other question, what about absorption? When you set the RDA where you set it, you're assuming everyone's absorption is optimal, and we now know clearly that's not the case, and there are many things that can interfere with that. So there's a paradigm shift here from looking at, well, there's no, say for example, I've actually read this in medical textbooks, there's no such thing as a dietary deficiency of sulfur, for example, to a more wellness-centered approach, which is, there's some people that are going to need their sulfating systems optimized, whether it's glutathione or other. They're going to need that system in better shape than it is. So I'm not saying there's a dietary deficiency. I'm just saying the system isn't working optimally. We have a system right now that some people call it a sick care system, or, and that's a reasonable name, I think. And the concept is, well, you have a symptom, and a symptom may even have an ICD-9 code associated with it, or some diagnostic code, a DSM whatever, the little code books where doctors and insurance people look up a code and find out what that disease is. It may even have a number or a name or a letter or something given to it, but that doesn't mean that it's an unalterable thing. And once there is a symptom, well, you have to do an operation or get a pill or something. You have to control the symptom. And this has been going on for years. I remember I mentioned these nagging questions come down to the cause. Well, what's the cause? Many years ago, I was a student in medicine, and someone asked me about their high blood pressure. Well, that's one of the most common things a doctor is going to handle in his patients is high blood pressure. But the bottom line is conventional medicine, especially then, had no clue why most people had high blood pressure. We called it essential hypertension, primary hypertension, idiopathic hypertension. Anytime a doctor uses the word idiopathic, the easy way to remember what that word, $10 word, sounds incredibly impressive. The easy way to remember what it means is sort of, we're idiots and we don't know why it happens. And that's the truth for a lot of things that go on with people as they age. We don't